Here now we're going to make a colour grid using all our blues and all our yellows. And you've learned from this module that when you mix blue and yellow together you get green. But of course there are many different blues and you've got many different yellows. So it's very useful as an aid to learning your colours and their mixing potential to do a grid like this, whereby you mix cadmium yellow with each of your blues, and then you mix lemon yellow with each of your blues again. And these little colour samples come into their little boxes, and the idea is that you keep this always in your painting bag. So that if you're painting, for instance, a still life and you need a particular green for a pear or an apple, you can look in your grid and see which two colours are going to give you exactly that green that you need. And while you're mixing these greens, you're learning that some yellows will mix very comfortably with another colour, a blue, and then other yellows seem to repel it. Colours have got different physiological properties. Some like to mix, some don't like to mix. Some grain, ultramarine blue grains beautifully. It makes little cellular structures in the wash, which is very beautiful. So I've begun a little grid like that. I like to put the tubes that I possess, I like to put them up and then write their name, and the make is also important. Write the make of your paint, because it's surprising how much, for instance, a raw sienna made by Winsor & Newton can be quite different from a raw sienna made by another company. And raw umber is especially prone to variations in colour. But you'll find each of the manufacturers of colour makes the colours are subtly different. So it's quite a good idea to put the manufacturer's name up, so that if you want to reproduce that exact colour again, and you no longer have Winsor & Newton cerulean, if you want exactly that colour, you might have to go out and buy another tube of cerulean blue made by Winsor & Newton. Okay. Now, before we start doing, I'm just going to do a couple of samples for you just to see how it gets going. But before we do any of the samples, I would like you to see that there are three different ways of doing these samples. You wet the little shape, and then you can either put the two colours in to the wet sample. So you put the blue in that side and the yellow in that side, and you encourage them to mix in the middle, so that you sort of have a 1 + 1 = 3 effect. This is wet in wet. The next way to do it is to glaze your sample. So here I wet the little shape. I glazed the blue in first, just flat blue. I waited for it to dry. Then I took my yellow and I glazed the yellow over. So you get quite a different effect from what you get there. The third way of doing it is to mix the two colours together in your palette and put them on as a wash. So you'll see, although I've used exactly the same colours in these three samples, each one is quite different from the other. This, of course, is the great appeal of watercolour, where we use two colours together, but we never mix them in the palette. They mix themselves on the paper, so that you get these wonderful variations. We see the blue that we used, we see the yellow that we used, and we see the beautiful green that it makes as the two pigments combine on the paper. I'm going to do a couple of samples here so that you get the idea. You'll see that in the top line, you for the ultramarine, you write the name, then you do the sample of the pure colour. And you'll see that I've tried to grade it. I've put a sort of a number 3 tone there, but I've put extra tone down here in the corner so that you can see the intensity potential of the different colours. doesn't work so well with the yellow, but it has worked quite nicely here. So you'll see what colour it is when it goes darker. Right, let me just do a couple of samples here for you. We'll start in this little box, and I'm going to do all my samples here wet in wet. And if you do this beautifully, by the time you've done all your colours, you'll have a little box of jewels here. Okay, my ultramarine is going in on one side, stroking it into the water, and then my cadmium yellow. Cadmium yellow is quite an orangey yellow, so it doesn't make a very nice green with ultramarine blue because it's got an orange bias. It sort of goes greyish, a greyish green, which is can be quite beautiful in some circumstances. See what beautiful little samples this makes. Let's try the ultramarine now with the lemon. The mix in the middle. You'll find some of them will mix quite readily and others don't really want to mix, they repel each other. But you'll get an idea of the lovely green that will make. Transparent yellow and lemon yellow are quite similar, but if you look carefully you'll see that the lemon yellow is cooler. That means it's got a blue bias, it's got a green bias. It's on the colour wheel. The lemon yellow tends onto the blue side. The transparent yellow tends onto the orange side of the wheel. So there's a very subtle difference between these two, but the transparent yellow is definitely warmer in tone than the lemon. Transparent yellow coming up. It's also a bit more powerful than the lemon yellow. That's going to make a lovely green. Look. Right. Here we go with the raw sienna. Now, raw sienna is an earth colour. It's my best colour. I use it for everything. Here's raw sienna. Oh, wait, let me put the blue in first. Here's the blue. Oops. It's a bit too strong. Don't make your sample too strong. It must still be transparent. Never put watercolour on so thick that you can't see the paper through on the other side. It's got to be transparent. You don't want an opaque look. This will make a very subdued green. It's almost a sort of a greyish browny green. So do you see the range of greens that we're getting here from these 4 samples? Lastly, I'm just going to do the raw umber for you. It's a very brownish yellow, and you'll get quite a neutral sample from this. Be careful to leave a little line of a dry paper in between each of your samples, otherwise they'll run together and you'll have chaos. They'll all leak into each other. You see how lovely and grey it's going. Beautiful. I often use ultramarine with raw umber. It makes wonderful greys. Look, it's not really greenish at all, it's much more grey. Right, there's your first line of samples, and then of course you stop with ultramarine blue, you start with the cerulean, and you mix cerulean with each of your yellows and put it in. And remember, when you're making your chart, to leave some extra columns in case you add another blue to your collection, or another yellow. So if you do, you add those samples in, and then you keep this in your painting box so that you can refer to it. And this is a sample chart for the colour green, but I'd like you to do one for oranges, and I'd like you to do one also for the purples, which of course is the blue, all your blues, all your reds, and the oranges would be all your yellows and all your reds. Okay, right. And you will really learn a great deal about your colours if you sit and just do this quietly. It's a lovely thing to do, creating colour.